What happens when family ties are shattered by the thirst for power? Imagine overthrowing your own uncle, the man who ruled your country with an iron fist, only to become the longest-serving president Africa has ever seen. This is the chilling story of Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo, the man who rose to power in Equatorial Guinea by staging a coup against his uncle, Francisco Macías Nguema, the dictator known for brutality and paranoia. But what Obiang did next shocked the world. Stay with me because this story is one of betrayal, survival, and the making of Africa's longest presidency. This is First Africa Voice, where we tell Africa's stories raw, real, and without filters. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the channel. My name is Paul Lingua, the Africa Orator. Now, let's dive into the story properly and break it down together. When Equatorial Guinea gained independence from Spain in 1968, many hoped for freedom, prosperity, and new beginnings. But instead, the country fell into the hands of Francisco Macías Nguema, Obiang's uncle. Francisco Macías Nguema quickly turned the nation into one of Africa's darkest dictatorships. He banned political parties, silenced the press, and unleashed a reign of terror. Historians record that under his rule, nearly a third of the country's population fled into exile. Executions, torture, and fear became the order of the day. But in the shadows, his own nephew was watching, Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo. Obiang was no stranger to power. He served in the military, rising to become the deputy defense minister, always close enough to watch the horrors unfold, but careful enough not to challenge his uncle outright. Behind the scenes, however, discontent was growing. Even within Macías' own circle, people feared his erratic decisions. He was known to execute ministers on mere suspicion, including family members. Paranoid consumed him. By 1979, the breaking point had arrived. The economy was in ruins. The population lived in fear, and Macías' increasingly violent paranoia began targeting even his own nephew. On August 3, 1979, Obiang struck. Backed by key elements of the military, he staged a coup d'etat. The move shocked many because this wasn't just a military takeover, it was a family betrayal. The once all-powerful dictator was sadly powerless. Francisco was put on trial for genocide, mass killing, and financial crimes. Witnesses testified about his brutality, from mass execution to the collapse of a nation's economy. He was found guilty of genocide, mass murder, and embezzlement, and executed on September 29, 1979 by a firing squad made up of Moroccan soldiers because locals were too afraid to do it. And at that very moment, his nephew Teodoro Obiang officially stepped into power. The coup was welcomed by many at the time. After all, Obiang ended one of Africa's bloodiest dictatorships. People hoped his leadership would bring freedom and stability. But little did they know, Obiang would remain in power far longer than anyone imagined. Now, why Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo overthrew his uncle, Francisco Macías Nguema? Teodoro Obiang overthrew his uncle Francisco Macías in 1979 because Macías had become one of Africa's most brutal dictators. Macías ruled Equatorial Guinea with extreme repression, executions, and mass killing. He destroyed the economy, banned education, and created a climate of fear. Even Obiang's own family and military allies were at risk under Macías' paranoia. Simply put, Obiang removed his uncle to end a reign of terror, but then held power for himself. Since 1979, he has ruled Equatorial Guinea with his own brand of iron grip. Today, more than 46 years later, he is still president, making him the longest-serving head of state in Africa. This story raises haunting questions. Did Obiang truly overthrow his uncle for the good of the people, or simply to secure power for himself? Was it an act of liberation or just another chapter of dictatorship written in the same book of fear and control? What began as a dramatic family betrayal has turned into one of the longest political dynasties the world has ever seen. Francisco Macías died by the gun, but his nephew Obiang continues to rule the oil-rich nation, surviving coups, elections, and international criticism. And so, the story of Equatorial Guinea stands as a warning. Sometimes, the end of one dictatorship doesn't always mean freedom. It could simply be the beginning of another. What does this mean for Africa? Obiang's coup was both a moment of liberation and a tragedy. It freed Equatorial Guinea from one dictator but locked it into the hands of another. For Africa, it is a reminder that the fight for democracy is not just about changing leaders, it is about changing systems. This was the story of how Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo overthrew his uncle Francisco Macías Nguema to seize power in 1979. Now, voices from the ground and civil society. Here comes what people are saying. Even though Equatorial Guinea is one of Africa's richest countries per capita, thanks to oil, the bulk of its people remain impoverished. Housing projects and urban infrastructure don't reach the poorest neighborhoods. With censorship laws spanning traditional and digital media, few citizens can speak freely. Criticizing the regime can lead to arrest, torture, or disappearance. This stifles honest discourse and entrenches fear. Human rights organizations like Human Rights Watch highlight rampant repression where political opposition is tolerated only in appearance. Leaders who speak out are silenced, imprisoned, or worse. Corruption, it is systematic and brazen. The nation is often described as a kleptocracy where oil wealth lines elites' pockets while public services crumble. Do you think Obiang was justified in overthrowing his uncle, or was it just the first step in a lifetime of holding on to power? Let's hear your thoughts in the comment section, because we believe that far as there are more men on earth, there are more opinions. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to First Africa Voice, and turn on the notification bell for more powerful African stories that the world needs to hear. Well, the dew of the day has crept upon our thoughts, and nature must obey its necessity. Here is where we bring down the curtains. Until we meet again, my name is Paul Lingua, the Africa Orator.